Welcome to the second season of Business Talk with me, Michael Avery. How time flies. I hope you're doing well as we head into the year of the vaccine. Now, we're talking to someone who knows all about solutions for SMBs, as they call them in the tech space, small, medium businesses, or SMEs, as we call them in financial journalism. Pinnacle is an authorized distributor for HPE. And today I'm talking to Jeremy Lichtenstein, who is the Pinnacle HPE Solutions Architect. So really, it's in his blood. It's what he does 9 to 5. And we know Pinnacle is one of South Africa's leading ICT distribution companies. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on, Jeremy, and all the best for the new year. Firstly, just tell me a little bit more about Pinnacle and this partnership with HPE.
Thanks, Michael. And all the best for the new year to you as well. I guess Pinnacle's been in partnership with HPE for about the last 5 years. The relationship's been growing stronger and stronger. So Pinnacle is one of South Africa's leading ICT distributors. We deal with quite a lot of different brands, and I'm fortunate enough to be one of the peeps doing Hewlett Packard Enterprise solutions. So like you said, I'm a solutions architect. So that basically means that when your business has an ICT issue, or you're looking to expand or grow, or just see how to use IT that much better, then you'll have the likes of me coming through to do a site assessment on your business to see what is the requirement. Because in a lot of the cases, IT is just focusing on keeping the lights on rather than innovating and seeing how these systems can actually help your business improve and be more competitive in this very interesting market that we're in.
I often look at IT, and I think it's the big challenge in IT to get across that message that you have all the tools here at your disposal, and we see this rapid pace of innovation within the development of new tools and solutions. But very often small businesses, I think in particular, look at these tools and are unsure how to use them, how to integrate them into their business. And that's why I think the title of a solutions architect neatly encapsulates how we bridge that perhaps lack of understanding into the SMB space. Now, HPE, we know, global kind of edge to cloud platform as a service company, and it's really built to transform business. Talk to me about how exactly in this environment where we're seeing COVID not only disrupt the way we've been doing things because people have to now work from home, but is also changing the way consumers interact with products and services.
So, well, I suppose the working from home is probably a great place to start. And I'll use an example that's very close to home in the fact that my housemate works as an architect. And we actually started having discussions with him about a remote VDR solution, VDR being virtual desktop infrastructure, to allow their teams to work remotely well, pretty much from wherever they are without the need for these super high spec desktops or laptops. Or because all the processing is happening at your server, either hosted in a private cloud facility or in your own on-premise environment with the relevant links. What's it called? Basically all the processing happens in the back end instead of on your desktop or laptop. So that you're not having to put these massive investments down to keep your staff operational. It's also the other side of it is if these workstations are to get stolen, then you've now got the issue of data loss. Whereas if you're at least doing all your processing in the back end where all your systems are in a secure location, then there's not as much risk to that.
And I think just to interject on that point, what it reminds me of is what small businesses are looking to try and do right now, and that is also to cut costs. And I think very often you look at the old way of doing things, and to go and fork out the kind of money for that computing power or processing speed, SMEs just wouldn't have been able to afford that kind of thing. Now you're offering speeds that have generally been in the domain, and computing power that have generally been in the domain of like the big banks or the big financial services companies to the ordinary SME on the street. How do you see this helping SMEs innovate in the future?
So, well, I suppose in a lot of cases, companies were just limited because they didn't have access to that computing power. So, what I found in the past when I did quite a large upgrade for one of my old clients back when I was in the support space was that as soon as we gave them all this infrastructure, they were suddenly like, wait, like everything is just faster. What else can we do? And then they started to play with SharePoint and see how SharePoint could integrate with other systems. And about a year into the implementation that should have lasted between 3 and 5 years, we had to go in and do a storage upgrade because they were making such use of they basically, all the buffer and capacity that we'd stuck down, they had used because they just wanted more. They now understood the power of technology and they wanted to see how it could improve their business. And
do you think that COVID has, and I often think of surveys that were conducted by the likes of Worldwide Works, for example, and Arthur Goldstuck, looking at the SME market and how many SMEs didn't even have a website. They didn't even have a web presence. They were just complete technophobes. Then COVID struck, and all of a sudden, overnight, it was a year of learning for everyone. We had to learn how to use Teams. We had to learn how to use Zoom and all of these off-prem solutions. Do you think it's almost de-risked and demystified some of the technology for SMEs out there? Do you expect us to see something of a tech boom as we exit COVID, hopefully, if we get the vaccine rolled out towards the back end of this year?
Personally, I think so. I mean, there's been a big drive for a few years now around digital transformation and using the technology to help business. But I think the whole pandemic forced a lot of businesses to relook at how they operate daily and try and find those efficiencies that can make all the difference. I mean, in a lot of cases, it's such small changes that we're having to do to companies' environments that make all the difference to how they operate on a day-to-day basis. I mean, a simple thing like giving your basic admin people faster computers, like just as far as how that improves their productivity, how it improves the access speeds to other systems, things like that. But yeah, so I definitely do believe that because there's been so much more focus on digital transformation, it's forcing a lot of companies to start to put the IT department under a bit of a magnifying glass to make sure that they are spending or getting the best bang for their buck there.
They're not there just to see if they can get the best fiber deal for the business anymore. They're actually there to sweat and work a little, which is really the way it should be in the year 2021, if you're not thinking like that. And we know there was a recent McKinsey report that stated 98% of South Africa's growth is likely to come from SMEs. So it's a very important sector that we need to be focusing on in order to catalyze and kickstart growth as we exit from this COVID cloud. Now, there's a lot of TLAs, three-letter acronyms. I've got an FLA, which is DHCI. Now, what is firstly DHCI, and how can it provide customers with the best of both worlds here, enabling SMBs with HPE?
So DHCI is quite a mouthful. It basically stands for disaggregated hyperconverged infrastructure.
I can see why they abbreviated that.
Yeah, so DHCI is, I guess the core of it is all about making sure that your IT operates as seamlessly as possible. So, I mean, we've been discussing a lot about HCI version 2, and with the system, a lot of the processes are automated. So instead of your sysadmins having to spend a few days configuring a new server, when they see they need more capacity, they basically order the unit of chips to their site, they plug it in, they add it to the cluster, and within a few minutes, they can be fully operational with that additional capacity. But I mean, even in the case of a new installation, it's getting to the point where installation teams can arrive on site. They've done a lot of pre-planning beforehand, and again, you can be fully operational within about 20 minutes on a system that's giving you, well, HPE refers to it as 6 nines of availability. But there's actually a use case. So DHCI is built on the SimpliVity platform, which is all about, staying uptime and efficiency. whereas DHCI sort of breaks the stack out. So before we had to have nodes that were almost identical with the same sort of processing memory and storage capacities. And now you can start to break that out and say, okay, I need this much computing and this much storage, and sort of place the workload where it's best suited. I mean, you can even get to the point now where if certain workloads are better suited at different remote offices, then you get that workload to run at those environments and then replicate back to head office. And in the event that something happens to any of the sites, you can have the system automatically and seamlessly fail over to the alternate locations to give you that peace of mind that your business can keep operating.
And I think in today's world where we are seeing offices work in a far more disaggregated manner, teams working remotely, that certainly looks like a solution that should be taking off in a COVID environment. What are some other solutions that you're seeing SMBs approaching you for, and what seems to be the big driver of these solutions at the moment?
Well, I suppose, I mean, some things that are really helping from an HPE side as far as IT administration goes is their InfoSight Cloud, which will monitor your entire infrastructure stack from your storage, your switches, your servers, just to see if there are any problems and try and preempt them before something goes wrong. I mean, there's a few use cases where HPE have released alerts to their customers to say, please apply this firmware update because we've encountered a vulnerability that could affect your site. And I mean, all the controllers are being engineered so that you can, you can do firmware updates without having to experience downtime. I mean, if you look at Primera, which is HPE, one of HPE's flagship storage products, they have a guaranteed 100% uptime on that platform. So if you genuinely have a mission critical business that cannot afford to go down, you can opt for one of these solutions. And they've got the service and support to back up, well, wow, that very large claim.
That is a very large claim, 100% uptime. I don't even think those who are believers in the blockchain and Bitcoin believe it'll be 100% foolproof. When we look at the issue of going into the cloud, of data management and storage and those kinds of issues, just to tack on to that point, obviously we've had a big concern recently in the public around WhatsApp and data privacy. And people are migrating to different platforms now, Telegram or Signal. But I just think this issue of data integrity and security is going to be a big theme as we see teams working off-prem. How does that feed into the kinds of solutions that you're offering to SMEs to ensure that they've got their data well managed, secure, and their cybersecurity is 100%?
So, well, there's a couple of things there. So the first one that comes to mind is HPE Silicon Root of Trust, which is all about security. It basically means that HPE they're manufacturing their own silicon, so for their chipsets. So there isn't any chance of a third party tampering with the firmware that's on these devices, because in a lot of cases, companies get attacked internally because of some compromised firmware or because someone's left the server room door open and it's allowed someone to sneak in and plug something into the server that shouldn't be there. Yeah, I mean, in a lot of the cases, these security breaches are because of human error or just some sneaky little manipulations from guys that do this for fun. But I mean, beyond that, if we look back at the SimpliVity stack and the DHCI offering, these solutions include a very comprehensive backup and replication system. And I'm trying to think how to explain this so that the listeners, for those listeners that aren't super technical, but yeah, basically there's a lot happening in the background to make sure that if something does go wrong, you can restore the data pretty seamlessly. I mean, one of the guarantees that HPE offers on their DHCI and SimpliVity offerings is that you can back up and restore a 1 terabyte virtual machine in 1 minute or less.
1
So,
terabyte in 1 minute or less. I think most people can understand how impressive that is. And when we look at, I mean, now we're getting almost into the realms. I would certainly think of supercomputing.
hmm.
Supercomputing for SMEs, do they require that kind of firepower? How should small and medium-sized businesses employ supercomputing principles, enabling HPE type solutions in their business?
So this is where I bring in the team from Point Next, which is HPE Services Division. Because supercomputing is such a specialist field, I've only been fortunate to work on, I think, 2 opportunities last year, which were for, well, supercomputing, well, had a supercomputing requirement for mass data processing. And it's, it's very specialized, and you want to make sure that if you are looking at that, you have a competent team behind you that can actually back up everything from end to end, because it's not just about the hardware that the processing is running on. It's about knowing that the process that's running on that hardware has been correctly thought out. The applications are all talking to each other seamlessly. I guess just to make sure that as many of the unforeseen things that could happen have been thought out. And if something does go wrong, you've got a capable team again that can support you.
But very interesting to see, going back to COVID, how some small research teams, for example, are employing supercomputers to analyze large amounts of data to better understand things like the spread of COVID, machines that get into the kind of teraflop range of data analysis, which is quite staggering. Now, when we talk about software-defined infrastructure, how can software-defined infrastructure create big solutions in a small way for SMBs?
Software as defined allows you to take a lot of compute resources and just use them as effectively as possible. So I think a good way to look at it is in the case of a large data center that has multiple customers connecting to that environment, with their own customers using those environments. The software-defined platform allows you to basically compose resources as you require them. And it's all API driven, so it means it can pretty much be automated. So you can have systems that work out when additional resources are required, and it automatically creates additional VMs to handle those workloads. It's because you're basically building an entire compute stack in the virtual world. So from the perspective of the IT sysadmin, they still seeing server node storage and networking, but in actual fact, these are all virtual devices sitting on a server somewhere at a data center. And the great thing about it is if you're not using all these resources, you can then power it down and only get billed for the resources that you are actually using, which is also one of the new offerings from HPE called GreenLake.
And then throttle it up when you need it, so sort of as and when you need that power, it's at your disposal.
Yeah, exactly. So it also applies to, like we were saying, with the that data analytics space. If you're not doing data analytics all the time and you find you only need those resources for 2 or 3 hours of the day, you're only going to pay for those resources for the 2 or 3 hours of the day that you're using them. So then you're also saving on power, cooling, and all those other little costs that you might not have considered.
Now, Jeremy, it's been fascinating chatting to you. We are running out of time. For SMEs, for entrepreneurs out there watching this, where's a good place to start thinking about how you need to start using these new tools in an environment where we know business is changing? We're in a new normal, so to speak. Where's a good place to start?
So, look, I like to look at IT as an enabler of business. So I think the first place is to say, where is IT hindering my ability to do business? And where do I feel, or as a business owner, where do I feel that things could be better? But at the same time, there's going to be those cases where companies actually don't even know where to start, in which case they can contact the likes of myself and my team from Pinnacle, and we can come and do an assessment and just see, well, sort of map where the business is going, what IT infrastructure they have now, and try and build a bit of a roadmap for the future for them. And in a lot of cases, we might say, don't touch your infrastructure. It's actually fine for now. rather focus on these other elements. Maybe there's some sort of mechanical automation that needs to happen in a factory first before we can bring in these fancy systems. The point is, it's about building a solid plan. I guess in my world, I like to do things once, and when I do something, it must be done properly. So I feel that my IT systems should give me that same sort of, what's the word? Well, they should just perform for me.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I like to use a medical analogy that I go to the physio regularly to ensure that there isn't a buildup, an inflation of issues. And if you only go once every couple of years, and they spot all of these other things that are out of alignment because there was something, and I run a lot because my ankle was out of place. It's the same thing with your IT systems. If you're not getting an holistic view, then you build up issues over time, and things are always developing, and the pace of innovation in the space is absolutely staggering. But I think it's a great place to start, is to sit down with the experts who can then map something through the business and say, right, this is where you can be, and potentially put out a roadmap as well. If you can't afford to do it all at once and have your IT system kind of turbocharged overnight, and at least you can take it in small chunks and bites as well.
Exactly. And I mean, at the same time, we're not coming in to try and displace your IT provider. We're here to enable your IT provider to offer you the best service that they can. It's like, we're not in the support game. We're here to offer the solutions that help your business to grow.
Absolutely. And that is what this is all about, getting SMEs to grow in a post-COVID world. Jeremy Lichtenstein, Product Solutions Architect for Pinnacle HPE. It's been a great pleasure catching up with you virtually. Isn't it wonderful what we can do in this new world? All the best for the new year.
Thanks, Michael. It's been fantastic chatting. All the best.